is a general discussion about mental health. It is not to be interpreted as specific advice for a specific situation. Every situation is unique and requires advice to be tailored and adapted to that situation. All information in this broadcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional mental health services. If you or a loved one are experiencing mental health distress, please speak to a licensed professional in your area.
It's time to shine that light that lives in you. Living well. It's not too late to change. It's time to be the change. Living well. It's time to shine that light that lives in you. Living well. It's not too late to change. It's time to be the change.
Living well takes a community. So remember to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share with a friend.
Welcome to another episode of Living Well, where we attend to the mind, the heart, the body, and the soul. Now, this is a follow-up to last week's episode, so if you haven't watched part one, I beseech you to go back, look at part one, and then join us for part two. Today, we are talking to marriage prep mentors who help couples on their road to the altar. They help them to decide whether they're ready for marriage, but maybe not this partner, or whether right now they should put marriage on hold. And they're giving us gems, great tips to help those of us who are married be more successful as we continue along this journey. So we're not gonna hold you. We're gonna jump right back into the conversation. Let's go. All right, family, and we are back with part two. Now, I hope that you were able to catch part one last week. If you didn't, I suggest that you go back, watch part one, and then pick us up in part two. We are here talking to the marriage prep facilitators here at Faithful Central Bible Church. Part one was really talking about their marriage, their love story, and what it takes to be in this thing for the long haul. Now, we're going to talk about the marriage prep part. Like before you get married, what are the things that we try to teach you here at Faithful Central to help you decide whether you want to get married, whether you want to not get married but not get married now, or whether this is not the right situation for you, which we count all of that a success. So I want to pick back up where we left last week, but let me introduce our guest again. We have Joanna and Chris, who have been married almost 11 years. Almost 12. 11 years going on 12. Then we have Andrea and Rod, who are our OGs going on 30. 28. Going on 28 years. And then we have Dr. Nisi and Terry, who are going up to 20. 20.
Yes.
All right. So we have a span here. So let's pick up where we left off. We were talking about like that every marriage has something, right? When you get married, you're two people coming in with however 20, 30 years of history of being raised in experiences and situations. So this expectation that you are going to be a perfect fit and agree on everything and have the same perspective about everything in your life can really set people up for big disappointment and wanting to leave or not be married, or thinking that there's something wrong with their marriage because we don't handle money the same way, or we don't have the same ideas about how the kids are going to be put to sleep, or how often we should eat at home, or any of those things, that there are these differences that come up in marriage. And I mean, just kind of picking back up on handling conflict in relationships. When you're doing marriage prep, and we're going to talk about what marriage prep is, but I just want to hear, like, what would you tell couples about how to handle intense fellowship, as it is referred to here?
Good.
Ladies first. I'm going to say when we're out in the public setting, I'm going to talk about that.
Okay.
Because oftentimes you see people become very disrespectful and they start to share too much. I would say before you even start to share, or the audience in which you're engaged in, make sure it's a clearance amongst the two of you that it's okay to share that information that's about to be displayed, but then also have some boundaries. Sometimes we can get excited about certain things and the other person is kind of like, oh, I think they're sharing too much. But we have a word. We love a Michael Jackson song, I Want to Rock With You. And so at some point when you're in a conversation and you're starting to share too much or do too much, I want to rock with you. Nobody knows what that means. Now you all know what that means. But nobody didn't know what that means because it was like, okay, you're at the line. Now, if you go beyond the line, we're in trouble. We're in danger of some intense fellowship right now. So have some things in place that will allow you to respect one another, to respect the area in which you're in, and then make sure that when you're displaying your stuff, that you're in wise counsel and that you're able to be transparent with people that are willing to pray for you, willing to encourage you, and to hold you accountable. Because so many times we could get with our girlfriends and they say, well, Rod is blah, 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 blah. No, I don't want you to do that. I want you to tell me when I'm out of place, when I'm wrong. I want you to check me. And so that's why you need to make sure you're in the company of wise counsel, of individuals who not only support you, but pray for you and support marriages.
Preach.
That's right.
Gave her the mic. Look, I'm gonna do the same.
Well, we learned in marriage prep that we just have to fight fair, you know? So there's not yelling and name calling and any of that, because ultimately this is this man that God has given me. He is God's child first. So the words that I speak over him, like those have power. So even in frustration and even when I'm angry, it's about what I'm feeling and the actions that I'm seeing, not personality. I'm not calling him, you know, whatever. I want to address what's the root of what's making me upset? What action or inaction? Can we talk about that instead of this blanket? You always do so-and-so. You know, it's just trying to be focused on what exactly in this moment. Don't bring up stuff from 10 months ago that you never resolved and you didn't have the courage to... Keeping it kind of singular to the moment so that it doesn't blow up into something that can last days and days. But then we also have this rule from when we were first married that nobody's leaving. We don't storm out of houses and slam doors and all of that. We can take a break and we can circle back to, you know, continue the conversation until everyone feels good about the resolution. But this whole, you on my nerves, we can't do that because we're a team. You can't abandon your partner, especially when you're in the middle of a battle. That's real dangerous to go out the house when you're angry and, you know, you're angry at this person and who knows what can happen. Or even if you can see that person again, or, you know, we can go to the other room, but just trying to make sure that there's just rules of engagement. If you're upset, there's certain things that we're going to do as a family, and we model that for our children. And I love being able to tell our boys, you've never seen mommy say that to daddy. So you can't say that to your brother. You've never heard your daddy raise his voice. So that's not what we do in this house. You know, so remembering that we have little people that are watching the way that we engage with one another, and that not only is setting the standard for how they engage with one another, but one day I always say I'm raising future husbands. They're going to engage in the same way with their wives one day. So.
And then I would add to that is that we never have a disagreement in front of them. We make it a point to, because I don't want to say argument or intense fellowship. We make sure that it's never done in front of them so that they understand, you know, even if they can sense that mommy and daddy are upset about something, they also see us work it out together, you know? So that and that we don't put each other out of the bedroom. You know, even, you know, we're not walking out, but we're also not putting each other out of, look, we pay for this bed together. I don't care how mad we get. We gonna sleep in the bed. You sleep on your side of the bed, I'll sleep on mine, but we gonna be in the bed together. So that's the other thing.
You know, if I can add to Joanna, and when you mentioned about leaving the house, you have to be very cautious when you do that. Even if you attempt to do that, because that makes that other person feel abandoned. Mind you, God gave you these gifts. You don't want to abandon the gift. You want to cherish it. even intense fellowship, it can be renewed. So I thank you for that. That's very, very, very important. Do not abandon. You leave, go downstairs, but don't open that door. Because if you go out there, he's waiting for you.
Yes.
Lurking back and forth, waiting for you, man or woman, to grab you. So thank you.
That's really good. That's the word.
You know, we have a couple of techniques in our household, and there's two things. We always say this, and whenever we're in the in you know, mentoring, or if we're in the class in the sessions with the couples, and is only room for one fool at a time in the house. Nisi actually came up with that coined that phrase, which means that when the argument starts, the intense fellowship starts, and one person's going up and they're raising their voice, they're just mad or whatever, they're just out of control. The other person has to be the one with the level head and say, you know what, I'm not gonna climb up there with you. So that's what we mean when there's only room for one person, one fool at a time in the house. The other thing is we have this signal, the timeout signal, right, which cannot be violated. And that's one of the hardest things to do when that's thrown up, and you are the one that's up there right now. I'm not coming down. I worked all this hard to get all the way up here. What you mean time out? I ain't finished saying what I need to say. So it is a respect thing. And in the beginning, it was really hard to honor that. But as we've grown and matured in this relationship, it's obviously the intense fellowship moments are few and far between now, but when they do happen, it's kind of like, okay, okay, I need to stop. I just need to, because if you keep going, you're going to say something you're going to regret. We all know this. And then it's like, how do you come back from that? So now the issue is not about what should have been tabled. Now it's what you said in the heat of the battle. So now you compounded it. So as you grow, you're like, okay, can we just get a timeout right here, because we ain't going nowhere. Right? Because we're talking over each other. You're not having a dialogue. You're having a monologue. Yes. One person's holding the mic, or you got two people holding the mic and they're having separate dialogues, separate monologues. That's not a conversation. Yeah. You got to have a dialogue in the marriage. And one person talks, the other person listens. And then when that person is finished saying everything that they have to say, you give them the choice. Now, is there anything more? What else do you have? Okay, and you make sure they say that everything they have to say, and then you repeat it back. So there's some techniques that we have put into place, but that's basically is the respect thing, when you have those intense fellowships.
So, I mean, again, another point is that you have these techniques and these tools in your bag for when the times come, when they arrive, because they're going to happen.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I know my husband is not here, but this is something that has been cleared. I always talk about it's important to be honest about who you have and know that person, and then you create strategies that could work for who you're with.
Right.
And I learned very early on, like the young people say now, match energies. I didn't know what that was until I married my husband. So, before I could, because I won't say I'm short, but I'm here, taller than her, but I can get loud. And, because I can push people up off of me. What I realized very early on, that if I go to a 7, my husband gonna be at a 9. And if I go to a 10, he gonna be at 15. That regulation, I was like, okay. Okay, so we're not gonna do. Talk about, okay, we're gonna stay here with the argument, and I'm gonna let you, okay, and if I stay here, he gonna come here. So I was like, okay, I need to regulate myself. And it was a learning curve for me because I wasn't used to doing that. So I was like, I need to regulate myself so that he can regulate himself. Like we had to, it was quick. Figured that out. I was going to say figure out, but I figured that out quick. That I was like, okay, I have to regulate myself, and I can't allow myself to be triggered in that way, because it's not going to be pretty. So, knowing who you're with and saying, it's okay. If I see it kind of ratcheting up, I'll be like, okay, babe, let's just take a minute. He'd be like, oh, okay. But if I'm like, what? He'd go, what? It is not pretty. And another conversation that we had before, I was like, we have to be mindful. Thankfully, these were early on conversations, but I was like, I want to be mindful because a lot of couples communicate or talk to each other. I'm not going to say communicate in various ways. And I said, for me, if I'm in a relationship, respect is really important. I'm going to respect you and you're going to respect me. And I put it in this way. I was like, you can't kiss me with the mouth you curse me.
Yeah. Wow, that's good.
Those two things can't coexist. So you can't, say, oh, somebody's stupid or why are you this or that? And then, now that we back together in 3 hours, now you coming in. You can't kiss me with the mouth that you curse me. So if we remember that, we'll remember to talk to each other with kindness and love, because that's what we want to be in our relationship. And if people remember that, to learn ways to control yourself, to only have, one person, one fool in the house at a time, to control, like, if I do this, then this is going to have this reaction, and saying that even when you're on my nerves, I can respect you.
Right.
Yeah.
And we, as you mentioned, we can talk about this issue, not you as a whole person, right? So I think that those things are important. So, talking about marriage prep, you, Dr. Nisi and Terry, now you two are leading and coordinating marriage prep. For those who might not know what marriage prep workshops are at Faithful Central, can you tell us just a little bit about the workshops and what that is? What is marriage prep?
Sure. So marriage prep workshop is what we call a 10-week course that is designed to help couples who are dating, if they're considering marriage, help them decide, like we were talking about earlier, if marriage is for them, if marriage is for them at this time, and more importantly, is marriage for them with the person that they're in the class with. And so in this class, we talk about different subjects, all the things that go into marriage, and the foundation when we talk about biblical principles. We're looking at marriage, what God says about marriage, what God's purpose for marriage is, what his plan for marriage is, and we address other additional topics like Christian family order. We talk about communication, finances, blended families, how to handle conflict, the things that we have been talking about here, and as well as intimacy. So what we like to say is couples come through and, go through the course to decide, okay, am I ready to walk this marriage out and do it according to the word of God and what he says? And do I want to do it with this person? Because I might be ready, but then when I start looking at this and going through this coursework, I decide, well, I'm ready, but he ain't ready. And so that is what we do. And what we like to say is, just because you go through the class, we don't consider it a success because you finish the course. Success actually is measured by when you come through the class, if you're able to make these decisions and say, you know what, maybe not now, or I got a few things I need to look at, or yeah, I should be looking at him sideways, because in full transparency, I went through the class more than once. So I learned the first time, I will say, the first time it was not at all. It was okay. The success was, nope, this is not right for me, and it's definitely not right for me to be with this particular person. And so then the second time I came through, and I got it right. So that's what we really, really, really encourage. And it's done in a very intimate setting. And the class is facilitated by lovely facilitators like we have here. And they walk the couples through. And we like to say that a facilitator will walk with the couples through the course and remain with them on their journey, even if they decide to go into marriage, and remain with them. So you start with somebody and you'll always have somebody to walk alongside you.
Now, do they have to be members of the church in order to go through?
Good question. No, they don't. So we have couples who come into this, come to our church specifically from all over. They come from other, churches, because we have an awesome ministry here.
Yeah.
And so, no, they don't have to just belong to Faithful Central. However, one of the requirements is if you decide to be married by someone on staff here at Faithful Central, you must go through the course.
Wow.
And there's a certificate and a graduation, all of that good stuff.
That is amazing. So you all work as facilitators, you all lead it and are facilitators. So what made you decide that you wanted to, as a couple, help facilitate dating and engaged couples on their journey to potential marriage? Like, what was it in you that said, this is what we want to do and where we want to put our energy?
For us, when we first got married, and we too went through the course, and yes, and Rod and Andrea were our facilitators, so full circle moment.
Yes.
But when we initially got married, one of our things was we did not have any couple friends that were. We didn't have a whole bunch of couple friends. We had a whole bunch of single friends, but we didn't have many. We had maybe one, maybe two, specifically that were our age. Everybody else was much older. And so one thing that God really placed on the heart of Joanna was we needed community. We needed somebody to fellowship with that was our age, married, Black, I can say that, right? On Living Well.
Yes.
Okay. So, but just, people that looked like us, and it felt like out of nowhere, but it really wasn't. We had six different couple friends who all got married the same year.
Wow.
So within a year of each other. So it was us and then 5 others, and then plus the 2 or 3 that we had already had. And so God placed on her heart, we needed this community. And so we formed We Are One, which is our marriage ministry together. And it started with 9 couples. We rented a cabin up in Big Bear, and we did all the work. We did all the cooking and the lessons, and it was just a time for us to get away as couples with these friends, these 9 couple friends, and just really put our marriages before the Lord. And then it just grew. After a couple of years. And so we had many of our friends who were then dating and getting engaged, who wanted to be a part of We Are One. And we were adamant, like, no, you got to be married. Nope, just no. But then we started thinking, like, but how do we serve that population that want, these are still our friends. How do we serve these people who want to be married and are really seriously dating? And then we just started meeting with them individually, so, when we were given the opportunity to do it here at Faithful, we're like, duh, like, yeah, let's continue to pour into these couples who want to be married, and just give them what God has given us, which is a sense of community, and have somebody that looks like them that can really pour into them.
Wow. Yeah. I think ours was a little bit different. Rod and I, too, went through the premarital workshop before we said I do. And so that was very important to us. And I think we were met with a lot of resistance because friends were like, how do you want somebody to tell you what to do? And I was like, because we're going to do it differently. A lot of times we see what we see in our homes, and some of it may be right, some of it may be wrong. But Rod and I were writing the pages of this journey together. Yeah. And so it was very important that we went through the process. And then we were invited to dinner by the Clayton family. Wow. We were blindsided, and they were inviting us into the ministry here at Faithful Central. We thought we were just going for fellowship. They had a whole nother agenda. And I probably was the one that resisted a little bit because my thought was, what can we provide to a couple? Right. And my husband, with both feet forward and hands raised, he was like, no. They see something in us. God has something for us to give the people. And I'm very literal. Like, if somebody tells me this is the rule, I want to follow the rule. 1, 2, 3 step. And my husband, and when we stand before couples today, I am in awe of him because he wants to show them the REAL. He wants to be so transparent. He doesn't want to leave any stone unturned, whereas I want to make sure you get all the book knowledge. He wants to make sure you see the day-to-day stuff, the stuff that we struggle with, the stuff that makes it work, that even when it doesn't work, we come back and try it again. And so we started this journey with the Clayton family on a dinner, and him saying, I want to do this. I want to do this. I was involved with a lot of different ministries. Rod hadn't served in ministry. And so the fact that he welcomed that, that made it attractive to me. And that's how we started this journey with serving.
Wow.
Well said. I will piggyback on what Andrea says in reference to the ministry, because I have a passion for it, because I saw a mirror of my grandparents, 40 plus years. Again, I shared 50 plus years. Andrea's parents were married for a very long time. So that reflection, I wanted to share, and I still want to share it with the world today, because it's not being shared like that. So this is a great, ladies and gentlemen, great, when I say great, platform for you to start your life.
Yeah.
And to have the best friend on your side, and you can share with the world that marriages do work. There is work, but you have to work at it to bring success to it. But more than anything, have faith, knowing that God has placed you in a special place for a special time.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I have to say that for me, Nisi's idea was for us to get into the ministry.
It was?
For obvious reasons. And I tend to go along pretty much with stuff, but it was like, okay, this is something you want to do, and we have to like serve like Friday nights and stuff like that. So it became very apparent to me that when we started the mentoring process, right, learning how to mentor and getting involved, shadowing stuff like that, that this was something that I would have to take seriously. Right, because it's like, if we're going to do this, if I'm going to back her in her desire to want to be there for couples and to help them navigate this thing called marriage, that I would have to start getting my act together, and we would have to start getting our act together. So it was her desire that sparked the fire inside of me of like saying, okay, I want to get behind this, do what's right. So that's going to put me on point now, because we're walking in front of couples. And they see us at church, and they see us out and about. So we have to be on our best behavior pretty much at all times, because you never know where you're going to run into folk at church.
Yeah.
You always got to be on point. So it was one of those things that really enhanced our marriage. Yeah. And so her desire became my desire, and it basically became a need, because your marriage is under attack 24/7. Right? So being on point with something like this, the accountability of the marriage ministry makes it really special.
And I'll just add to that, he said it was my idea. Well, we had our marriage mentors, Bridget and Blair Taylors, and they came to us and asked us about joining the ministry. And like you, I felt like, okay, we had only been married 4 years. Yeah, okay. And, it's like, okay, what do we have? But then when Terry and I talked, we also knew that there were some things that we had endured in our marriage, even in the first 4 years, and that we had also like, wow, how we have grown. So we knew that God had given us something, and also, given us a testimony. And when you just think about what we see happening in marriages, I really wanted to be a part of something that was on this side, to help people make informed decisions about the relationships that they were entering in. And so we just wanted to be a part of that. And then here we are 15 years later.
And here we are. So with all of this kind of this mentoring of couples and feeding into couples and being used, this being a part of your ministry in this way, I'm wondering, because I'm quite sure there are some singles who are watching now, or people who are dating who are not married. What would you say are some of the most common things that you see people who are dating struggling with as they're thinking about potentially being with someone in a marriage or forever? What are some of the bigger challenges that you see them struggling through?
I would say one of the bigger challenges I see is a lack of, if I don't know if this is a word, stick-to-itiveness. Yes. You know, so I'll speak for my generation as a millennial. You know, we have this reputation that we earn sometimes that if something doesn't feel good, we're out of there. You know, the minute that a job doesn't feel good or a friendship doesn't feel, a church doesn't feel good, we find a exit. And I think that what happens in relationships is that once you start to see anything that doesn't feel good anymore or requires some work, requires some personal growth, it's scary, and people shut down and they don't want to do the necessary work, like you were saying, Terry, that marriage is. And I think that it isn't glamorized. You see people hopping from relationship to relationship or even marriage to marriage. So this idea of kind of what our elders experience of being with the same person for 50, 60, 70 years, that's not something that people see often. So when you look at the lack of representation and then also just that urge to run, for lack of a better word, I think that is a challenge because marriage is such a commitment. Every single day you are choosing to love and serve and die to your own interests sometimes or your own comfortability. You know, it's a sacrifice. So it's so much joy too, because I don't want to make it seem like marriage is just pain and, you know, but you earn it. You earn those moments of security. And similar to kind of what Chris was saying earlier, one thing that I enjoy most about our marriage is the companionship. I don't ever have to wonder where my help is coming from or where, if I'm the first, if it's something bad that's happened, he's the first person I'm calling. If it's something good that's happened, this first person in that. But that required time. It took time for us to develop that. So I thank God for the work. I thank God for the challenges that we had to endure so that we could get, you know, we can get to this side. And I think that sometimes we walk away too soon. We walk away before it gets great.
Yes.
And I think that is a challenge specifically for couples our age.
I think I'll add to that. Oftentimes we look at television and glamorize stuff, and you know, we don't realize that there was many cuts to make that perfect situation, that scenario. And the same way in life, you know, Michael Jackson coined it. I'm looking at the man in the mirror. I'm asking that person to make a change before I can even ask you to make a change. So I come with a list of what I want my intended mate to be. And I'm not even half of what I expect somebody else to be. So I want to look at me first and see what do I bring to the table, and ask God to prepare me for when the person comes for me, that I'm available to receive the gift. Because if we're trusting God, if we're exercising our faith, we know that he knows what we stand in need of. And so we got to be ready to accept the gift because we've done the work in us. And then there will still be more work to do, but let's start with us first. Oftentimes we want to look. You can look at me right now and say, this is out of place, that's out of place, this and this. But if I in turn look at me and say, what do you bring to the table? And then where do you go from there to build, you know? So I think that's the start.
Start in here.
Yes.
Well said. I love to hear my wife speak. I appreciate her honesty and her transparency because she really, well, we do. We love marriage. We enjoy it. What I would suggest, you know, in reference to the question on table is pick your battles carefully. Be mindful of when and where you pick your battles and know how to have conversation. Right, Joanna? Like you said, communication. It's a key. It's one of the key components that we overlook. And it's so important that you listen to your mate, Terry, that you shared, Joanna, and everyone at this table. But more than anything, God has appointed you for this appointed time, so you have to listen to his voice first. And everything else will be added to you if this is what you want.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I know one of the things that Pastor Jordan always says when he's marrying people, he'll say, you know, you have to decide, talking about pick your battles, whether you want to be right or whether you want to be happy. And so people want to argue a point. It's like, does it really matter? What you're upset about and what you're being dogmatic about, does that really matter? So really deciding, like, do I want to be happy or do I want to be right about this thing, about whether we get arrowhead or sparklets? Like we just, right, exactly. And don't drink mine when yours run out. No, I'm just kidding. I was just kidding. But, you know, really thinking about, what am I bringing up? Is this important, an important place of contention? Is this something that I want to really have this level of conflict about, or can I just let it go?
Is there any value in
Right.
that conflict?
Right, exactly.
Where's the value
Right.
to this relationship?
Right,
If
exactly.
there's no value, I'll push it to the side.
Right.
Let it
Leave
go.
it alone, you know?
Let it go.
Let it go.
Let it go.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no point in fighting a battle. I had a boss who used to say, you know, you could be right and still be wrong.
Yeah.
So what's the use of it? One of the things that we've noticed is some couples or some people inside a relationship bring the unreasonable expectations to the relationship. Particularly when it was said earlier, you know, you look at the way your mom and your dad did it, how they did it in your house, and now this is the only way to do it, right? Or you have this whole list in your mind of what this person should do for you in order to make you happy. I will be happy if they have this, and this, and they say this and this and this and this, and they agree with everything that I have to say. So until you make those adjustments, you're never going to be happy. Being single allows you to live however you please and expect to go to places where they're going to please you. But when you choose a mate who is your mirror again, they're going to learn some stuff about yourself that, oh, maybe I shouldn't have expected that from them. Look at the good qualities. I like what you said, Joanna. It is fun. So you look at the positives in marriage instead of dwelling on the negatives, and you find the things in that person that you are hooking up with that's going to enhance you, make the positive changes in yourself, cause you to be the best version of yourself that you could possibly be. Without them, that wouldn't happen. But with them, you can see everything as full potential and bring it forward.
One of the things that I also noticed, and we were talking about earlier, and that's this idea, actually, all of you guys we're all talking about it, and couples not anticipating growth in marriage. There's this expectation that I am who I am today, and you should always expect me to be, you know, the same. And when we talk about looking in the mirror, it's like, okay, there's compromise here. I'm no longer just me and one person. There's somebody else that I have to think about. And if I allow God to love me the way, if I allow God to love my husband through me, then that means I have to allow him to do some work in me, which means that there's some growth that needs to happen in me. And so I think, to your point, especially Joanna, when you say they want to walk away too soon, it's like, it's not just about changing that person, but be willing to experience some growth. I'm so glad to have the growth that we have had in 20 years of marriage, you know, and so that is, to me, what also makes it fun. There's work, but that is what makes it rewarding. So it's this idea that everybody want to stay the same. Yes, we want your character to stay the same. You know, there's some traits that does not change. But when you learn to live your life in conjunction with another person and you ebbing and flowing and balancing and growing, you should expect growth. You should expect change. So that's what I would say.
To what you were saying, that we can look back at year 1, 2, and 3 and laugh at some of the things that we thought was going to take us out.
Right.
You know, like, it's so minor.
Yeah.
And if we had walked away because, you know, he didn't know I had this baby all day. You know, those kind of things that feel so paramount in the moment.
Right.
When you get through it, you can look back and see, number one, God's hand was all over you because he keeps you in those moments where you feel despair, but then also you can celebrate the growth. And I think every anniversary for us is an opportunity for us to really look back and see God's hand and how he's kept us, and the moments of joy that we wouldn't have had if we weren't together, and the growth that I feel like Chris sees things in me that I don't always see in myself and will push me. And I feel like if he wasn't there, if he didn't make decisions every day to commit to not only me, but my potential and where he sees, me going, those are the things that we don't really talk about as often when it pertains to marriage. Is those he see, God chose him for me.
Yes.
And that's the part that I so enjoy, and it makes everything else worth it.
Yes. Wholeheartedly. Wholeheartedly.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So being mindful of the time on our part 2, I would love to hear if you have any, where you've dropped all kinds of nuggets of wisdom, but what would probably be the last thing that you would want to leave couples with who are considering marriage? Like, what would be the last thing that you would want to say to them as they're thinking about being a wife or being a husband?
Come take the class.
Oh, okay. Come to marriage prep.
Take the class.
Mic drop.
Come to marriage prep.
Come
Don't
take the
make
class
a decision until you take the class.
and be transparent.
Be transparent.
Be willing to share your stuff
Yes.
so that it could be revealed and that God could heal you. God could move you in a different direction. God can change your thought process, your outlook, and how all that happens.
Yeah, the class is, that's very good. Excuse me
Mike.
for interrupting you. The class is very, very thorough, and it teaches you a lot about yourself.
Absolutely.
I know one area, the family history analysis,
Yeah.
breaks it down. It breaks it all the way down to when you was a little baby, to learn how to love, what your mama showed you, what your daddy showed you. But this is what you're going to be developing in your lifestyle with your mate. So yes, please take the class if you have the opportunity. You'll get to learn a lot about yourself, more than anything that you can present to your bride or your groom.
And I would just say, keep an open mind.
Yeah.
Like, don't be so stuck in your own ways that you can't. We've been talking about growth. Like, don't be so stuck in your own ways that you can't allow yourself to grow, and allow yourself to see things from your mate's perspective. So I think that is key. Before saying I do, like, you want to really make sure that you are able to take a step back, really look at everything, as Bishop used to say, zoom the lens out a little bit, and really take a greater perspective and see if this is really what you want to do.
I think, sorry.
Three things. First one is be vulnerable, be transparent, and be ready for change. And that's it. You do those 3 things, and you'll have a successful class, no matter what the outcome is.
That's good.
That is.
That's good. I was going to end it, but he ended it much better. Don't avoid the difficult conversations. Don't be afraid of the difficult conversations. That's what I got.
They don't go away.
Go away.
They don't go away. They don't go. Well, you heard it here first, people. Come to the marriage prep workshop at Faithful Central if you're even thinking about. You don't have to be engaged. As a matter of fact, we kind of prefer that you're not engaged.
Absolutely.
So you don't have to be engaged, but if you're dating seriously and you want to get other eyes on the marriage and get more information about how you could potentially move forward successfully, come to the marriage prep workshops at Faithful Central. So that's our time. That's our time for today. We always like to leave you with a resource. Again, if you didn't see part 1, we ask you to go back, look at part 1. There was a resource there that Andrea shared with us. We have a couple of more resources that we also want to share with us. Andrea, you have number 2. Something else that you brought?
This is a couple's daily devotional. It also kind of expands on not only God's word, because it is the Bible, but it gives you like little scenarios where you can have food for thought to open up discussions between you and your mate.
And we see that you have used that one over these 28 years.
A lot.
Yeah.
Still referencing a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, because the difference is with going through the marriage prep is we're not doing it the world's way. We're doing it God's way. And so there's no argument with that.
No.
You can't say it's Andrea's way. No, what did God say about it?
Right. Thank you for that. So, and we also have another resource here that's actually used in our marriage prep workshop. It's called Before I Say I Do by Norman Wright and Wes Roberts. So this is another book. It's a workbook. You can find it on Amazon if you're not able to come to the marriage prep, or even if you are, you can do some pre-work, but you do this as part of marriage prep. And then another book that I'll share with you is a co-authored book called Before the Broom, a premarital workbook for dating, engaged, and newly married African-American couples. And this approaches some of the important aspects of personhood, of who you are and who you are in relationship with your mate before you get married, and how you look towards the future and talk about how you want your future to look, right? So how you're going forward through a lens of culture. So what does it mean to be African American and married? So these are 2 books. All of these you can find on Amazon, or a couple you can find at Costco. Again, we want to thank you for tuning in. And until we meet next time, we pray that you are living well.
For more information and resources, be sure to check us out at normalizehelp.org. And you can always email us at livingwell@faithfamily.org to get a question answered or to tell us a story. You never know, your question might make it to air or be the subject of one of our episodes. See you next week.
It's not too late to change, it's time to be the change. It's time to shine that light that lives in you. It's not too late to change, now it's time to change. Now it's time to change, now it's time to change, now it's time to change.